Good. All right. All right, we are ready to get started today. Thank you all for being with us, whether you are here in person or via Zoom. We've got some good information to share. We're always curious, right, about how the budget is and what we can and cannot do. That tends to lead a lot of our daily activities and anything that we're looking to do with our students and with our offices. And so this is a great time to get an overview of the holistic budget that takes place on campus. And then at the end, we'll open it up to some questions from the audience. And we will have, thank you for Debbie for being here to answer some questions, Dr. Fu, and of course our president for being here to answer some questions. And of course, you know, Pam, who knows everything when it comes to budget, right? So thank you all for being here this morning, and please join me in welcoming Debbie Astone to do our presentation this morning. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to everyone online as well as to those that are here in the room with us. So it's good to see all of you. I know it's the second day of the semester and a hectic time, and as I was chatting with my colleague Mary Willis, a little bit noisy over by the Thomas Building, so we apologize for that. But thank you all so much. I want to thank Belinda and the staff assembly for this opportunity. I think, started this a few years ago, modeling what we've done with the Academic Senate and with a similar presentation. And I think it's really helpful that there is this overview of our entire campus budget. As we mentioned earlier, all of the funds are tracked very carefully and also will show by division how the resources are allocated. So this year was a better year, and so we'll go through some of that information. Of course, most importantly, our compensation increases for our faculty and staff. We always like to kind of share this timeline because it did change actually this year. So the Board of Trustees usually considers the budget for next fiscal year in November, but they will be considering the 23-24 budget at their September Board of Trustees meeting, where our president will be as well. And then that will provide more time between September and January when the governor submits his budget to the legislature, so that there will be more opportunity for advocacy and conversation with Sacramento and our legislators on the budget needs for the CSU. November to January is a very tight timeline, and you have the holidays in there. So this will be the first year of this new budget cycle, and I think that will provide support for the CSU and our needs. Then in February, the legislative analyst analyzes the governor's budget. The governor's what we call May revise comes out in May. And then the state budget is adopted and the CSU gets its final budget, usually by by June 15th. And then in July, we get the budget letter from the chancellor's office, which gives the allocations to each of the 23 campuses. And then in August, we do our level A, which goes to all of the divisional areas. And then level B is what goes from our divisional areas to our departments or colleges and schools. Well,
it's just a window that popped up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Usually it's user errors.
Not at all. Go ahead.
So this shows the level A and level B and the percentages. So if there are level A funds that are distributed after funding our central funds, the percentages that go to each divisional area are listed there. So that's what we call level A. And then level B is what goes to the colleges and schools and the departments that are within those various divisional areas. This pie chart shows our actual expenditures for 21-22, which is the fiscal year we closed on June 30th, and then our estimated expenditures for 22-23. And as you can see with this pie chart, it's at approximately a 3% increase in expenditures, but salaries and benefits are higher in 22-23, obviously with the compensation increase we're very grateful for. 75% as compared to about 73% in 21-22. So a little bit less in operating, 13% as compared to 14. And then SUG is our state university grants. And that percentage stays about that much. And that's really a pass-through for financial aid for our students. But it's always helpful. So the total university budget, projected budget of expenditures, about $353 million. And that includes general fund revenues as well as tuition and fees.
From the state.
So it's a combination, right, of general fund and tuition and fees. I am so sorry, ma'am. Next slide. Okay. So here's the breakdown the president was just mentioning between general fund and fees. And we also show the CSU total budget and then Fresno State's portion. So I'm gonna try to sort through. We did get a one-time adjustment in 21-22 of $6.7 million. This is for the funds that were held back in 21-22 by the chancellor's office. They held back approximately 6% of our budget on all 23 campuses for system-wide priorities. And then they did give it back in 21-22, and that took care of the retroactive salary increase for faculty for CFA. And so that was restored back into our base budget for that retroactive pay. We didn't get quite everything back, but we did get about 90% back. So that's the adjustment that was made to our 21-22 base budget. And then you can see the increase for 22-23 that we'll go through, which is 18.1 million. So our total general fund budget of 208,483,000. And then when you add tuition and fees, another 148,431,000 for a total operating budget of 356,914,000. So again, a combination between general fund and tuition and fees. We also received, this is how the breakdown kind of occurs here. And we've got 720,000 for employer paid health premiums, compensation adjustment for 22-23, and that does not reflect all of the cost for the compensation increases. So you'll see that in just a little bit. We did receive some enrollment growth funding for 800 FTE, about 11 million. Foster youth program, we were just discussing that, 604,000, and then an additional 1.4 million, 63,000 for state university grants. So for a total of 800,000.
Debbie, just really quick.
Yes, please.
We represent about 5%.
That's correct.
Of the CSU budget.
That's correct. Thank you, President. And usually our increase is about that same percentage.
Right.
And that historically has been where, we've been 5%, maybe some years a little over 5%, but we tend to be in that range. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oops. This slide shows in total what the CSU budget increase was over as compared to 21-22. So 211 million in unallocated funds for operating budget priorities, 81 million for resident growth of 9,434 FTE, of which we were funded for 800, 35 million for GI 2025. And we did not know our campus allocation or decision on how the allocation would be made until just a little bit before this meeting, which will be similar to other years where it's based on our students' Pell eligibility. So that's good news for our campus and will yield us a higher amount of allocation for GI 2025, which is very important as we support student success and also our basic needs in partnering with our colleagues in student affairs. And then 10 million in student basic needs, and we're still waiting to hear then on those two allocations for the campus, and those will be forthcoming. One-time funding of 497 million for affordable student housing. We did receive 31 million for our campus, and we are working with our colleagues in housing and facilities to issue an RFQ and RFP to start that process. And so that will be our first new housing project in many, many, many years. And 31 million will not get it done, and our auxiliary will need to finance about 15 million in order to support the 31 million from this program. 125 million in deferred maintenance, of which our campus will receive approximately 5.4 million. Then there were projects that came through for some specific campuses, and so those are listed there. And we also benefited from $18.75 million for our university farm laboratory. In total, $75 million was allocated to the 4 ag campuses. So we're very appreciative of that allocation and know that we'll be working closely with our colleagues in the Jordan College to help implement some very needed projects and also sustainability initiatives. And then we also, thanks to Assemblymember Rambula, received $4 million, as the president shared, at our assembly for a mobile health unit for our College of Health and Human Services. So again, this is a one-time funding that came from the state to the CSU, and then one-time funding that came through those to our campus. This chart helps to show kind of the, I'm going to go back to that 11 million. So you could see the 11 million right here in strategic resident enrollment growth for 800 FTE. So this chart does, and we shared this with Cabinet when we were looking at the budget and working with, of course, colleague Pam Lewis very closely. So we have the enrollment growth, the 11,012,000, and then we did need to deduct 2,445,000 for what the CSU projects our tuition revenue to be versus what we anticipate and reality, kind of what we project our tuition to be. And it's a budget year comparison from 21, 22 to 22, 23. So if we're not going to hit that, we kind of get a budget deduction that comes through in our budget letter. So that's taken into consideration so that we can make ourselves whole for that not being able to hit the budgeted tuition revenue that the Chancellor's Office projected for us. And it's always each year, we never quite know how they do that calculation. So but that's taken into consideration. So we're really left with allocation of 8,567,000. And so this chart shows where all the new money is going. So the compensation funding that we did receive through the state budget did not cover all of the compensation increases that were negotiated with all of the respective employee and collective bargaining groups. So every campus was short about 1%, meaning that we didn't get the full amount from the state to the CSU for those compensation increases. But they were bargained for, and so each campus has had to figure out how they shore up that additional expense. So for our campus, it was $2,331,000 additional beyond what was funded by the CSU budget from the state. We need to contribute some additional dollars to our risk pool that takes care of unforeseen risk-related programs, initiatives, or projects. Utilities, our utility bill this year will be approximately $1 million to $1.5 million higher, just due to PG&E rate increases. Nothing we've done differently. In fact, we're trying to, of course, implement even more solar with our central plant project. We will see utility savings once our central plant project is completed, but it won't be realized yet. And so we're budgeting for that utility increase. Also budgeting for our future central plant availability payment, because that project is not a capital project that was funded by the CSU. It's a public-private partnership that once the project is completed, we will be paying kind of an annual availability payment or an annual lease payment for a 30-year term. The additional positions, as the president has mentioned in other communications, to support our Title IX and DHR efforts, Deputy DHR, Deputy Title IX, and also the search is beginning this fall for I'm sorry, I had the wrong title on here, University Diversity Officer, and we'll change that, my apologies. And then a placeholder for the Apple Distinguished Campus, and our colleagues in academic affairs are continuing to evaluate that opportunity as part of the C Success and ensuring that our students have the technology they need in order to be successful in the classroom. We also had some one-time unfunded costs. There was, of course, the one-time payment that our staff and managers received that was not funded from the state to the CSU or from the CSU. So each campus had to identify a fund source to take care of that one-time $3,500 payment. For our campus, that was $3,873,000, and that's being funded from the benefits pool. In addition, there was a one-time additional allocation to athletics this year and that is coming from tuition reserve. And then you can see the difference in the calculation, of the budget tuition revenue differential that is picked up at the top. So that is how all the new money is being allocated. So unfortunately, there's not any new money that is going to be allocated through the level A process to the divisional areas until we get the GI 2025 and basic needs money, which primarily goes to academic affairs and student affairs, and also some support to technology services. And we don't have those numbers yet, and that'll be added to this information. Here are our balances on our centrally managed funds, the balances that start as of, the ending balances as of 6/30/2022, the funding amount that was added to these centrally managed funds, and then the projected balance for 7/1/22. And these centrally managed funds are reviewed by the budget office on a regular basis and include our tuition reserve, benefits pool, risk pool. You'll see those there, state university grants, strategic planning, and that fund will definitely be utilized this next year as we begin the new strategic plan. And we have a consultant from ASCU who will be guiding that process. Our utility increase in our utilities, and then the enrollment growth, tuition adjustment, the amount going for the central plant project for the availability payment. So these are all the balances from our centrally managed funds. This graph shows the tuition reserve allocations and the amount that comes in each year. Our tuition reserve really is our only unrestricted reserve for the university. And so we take a very kind of close look at this reserve every year. Fortunately, with the last couple of years, we've been able to replace lost tuition revenue from our HERF allocations. So that has definitely helped shore up our tuition reserve fund. Otherwise, if we didn't have the HERF support to shore up the difference in tuition revenue that was lost during the pandemic, we would not have the balance that we have today. So these are the allocations that go to each of the divisional areas. These are pretty much consistent with the prior year. And then looking at our projected balance at 6/30/23 of approximately 8.7 million. And if there are needs, and if they do hit the tuition reserve, really trying to ensure that they're one-time needs so that we can preserve this balance, because this really is our only unrestricted reserve. The benefits expenditures projected to be 83.5 million for 21-22. We don't have 22-23 yet, but as you've maybe heard us say in other presentations, we are very pleased that we are finally at a point where our benefits pool has enough permanent base funding to cover the benefits expense, as well as projected increases on premium increases each year. That was not the case about 7 years ago, 7 years ago. So we watched this, of course, very closely, but to have permanent base funding to cover this has been a work in progress and is a very important, of course, benefit for all of us as CSU and Fresno State employees. Graduation Initiative 2025 shows all of the allocations, both in the past and the most recent for 21-22. And as shared earlier, primarily funds go to academic affairs and student affairs, and some to technology services. And for any new positions that are funded through this effort, that amount is transferred to the benefits pool. This does not include 22-23. That will be added once we know those amounts from the Chancellor's office. And we've been working with each of the divisions, student affairs and academic affairs, and know that this has made, especially in particular, huge difference in academic affairs. The next few sheets, I'll go through a little bit quickly, and we'll provide this presentation to the staff assembly, and they'll be able to post it and make it available to you. So these are the estimated level A allocations to each of the divisional areas, which then, if you have a department, then you will have to submit a level B budget that supports the level A allocations that went to your respective division. So with academic affairs, admin and finance, student affairs, technology services. So as you can see, academic affairs has gone up from the previous year on the effective rate. Admin and finance has gone down. Student affairs has gone up slightly. Technology services is flat. Advancement has gone down just a little bit. Office of the President has gone down. Athletics has gone down, and this just represents athletics level A. They have other fund sources that support their budget. And this chart helps to illustrate all of the different revenues that support from the university that support the athletic department budget. So you have level A, contribution from the benefits pool, contribution from tuition reserve that's recurring, the one-time additional $1 million this year to help to support some initiatives this year, and then their IRA fee allocation and their student body association fee allocation. So all of this combined, 18.3 million, which is a 5% increase from the prior year, which was, the prior year was a 2% reduction from the previous year. And that's primarily due to the one-time additional $1 million this year. The census data has not changed because that's done by the Chancellor's Office every November. So that'll be updated this November when we receive it. But we do, especially when we share this presentation with our academic senate and faculty colleagues, always focused. I know our provost and vice provost are on tenure density and working with the deans and associate deans and how we're tracking there and the continuation of that important priority. And for our employees, we do, again, this is based on November of 2021 data. So this will look much different in November of 22, especially given the number of recruitments that we've had this year. I'd asked our colleague, Mary Lou Mendoza-Miller, how many recruitments HR did this last year for staff and MPPs. That doesn't include faculty. I think it was 220 in fiscal year 21-22. So these numbers will look different. Of course, some of them were the resignations or retirements, not of course all new positions, but there were some positions that had been vacant or had to be reduced in fiscal year 2021 that came back in 21-22. So we're welcoming a lot of new colleagues, which is great too. So I'll pause there and be able to answer any questions. And I know Belinda and the staff assembly will help to facilitate questions, and I know the president and the provost and I'd be glad to answer any questions. And this presentation will be provided. I know there was a lot of information, but tried to really lay out in particular how all the new funds that we're getting this year, which are of course very well received. It just doesn't go very far, but we've tried to ensure that the priorities and needs of our various divisions have been taken into consideration. This information is shared with cabinet. We had at our retreat, we had a chance to go through it in detail as well, and think it's really important. And I really appreciate the president's support and my cabinet colleagues on ensuring the transparency and understanding of where our dollars are spent here at our campus. And our budget office team does a great job, and they're a great resource and support all through the year as we're managing our respective budgets and looking at carry forward balances and nothing. And also I may mention, nothing is being swept this year, carry forward balances. Each division will be able to retain their carry forward balance from 6/30/2022. And so that will be able to help. It's not good for recurring expenses, but if you have one-time expenses, it does help to give a little bit of cushion for this next fiscal year. So I'll pause there and I'll turn it back over to Belinda.
So we have, the way we're going to do this now. Thank you for bearing with us. We're learning, working through this process of doing both online and in person and trying to make it as effective as we possibly can. So sorry about the little noise level in the background, but I appreciate all of your patience with that.
We've learned to be very flexible, right?
Yes, 100%. We have about 160 people online, plus what we have here in person. So we are going to take a few questions online, then we'll ask the audience here, and then just kind of go back and forth and try to get as many questions in as we can. If this is your first time hearing this presentation, it's a lot of information to take in. And some of it is, I know your wheels are spinning, like, really, what does that mean? So this is the opportunity to ask. Debbie and the group has been really great about trying to be as transparent as possible and trying to make us all understand exactly what this means and how this works. And so please ask whatever questions. If we do not get to your question today, we will download the questions and then we will send them over to the administration and get some answers and then get them sent out. We will not send them out via email, but what we will do is put them on our website. But I will make sure that everyone is aware that it is when it's up and ready to go on our website, along with the presentation today. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to put Chris Cruz, who's one of my committee members who's online, and he's going to be reading the questions in our chat. But while we get him up and going, I'm going to go ahead and see if there's any questions in the audience that you would like to ask. We don't have a microphone, but what my understanding is when I bring you in the room, they should be able to hear your question. So do you have any questions in the audience?
I'm gonna first break the ice.
Thank
All right.
you.
So this was a lot of information. My mind is kind of spinning. But from like a staff perspective, the various departments on campus, where do we stand financially relative to being able to like keep up with inflation in terms of like yearly salaries? I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but as things change, where do we stand with regard to that?
So thank you for the question. And so this budget, of course, only reflects what was negotiated for as part of all the CBAs. So it does not reflect anything beyond that. And that's really for at least the staff. That's what the Mercer study that I know many of you have heard about from the CSU is really looking at more kind of what the market rate comparisons are and where our positions have not, are not meeting those thresholds. But that study though is kind of an unfunded study right now. And so that's where the advocacy, and I know all of the presidents and the chancellor's office, and when we have our chief financial officer meetings and the HRO meetings, the human resources meetings, everyone is so supportive and recognizes the importance of the Mercer study. And the challenge is we just need, of course, the governor and the legislature to support that additional funding for the CSU to make that happen. So there is, I think, strong consensus and support within the CSU that this is the right thing and that we need to do this for our staff, but we need to make sure that the funding comes with it. Even this year, you'll see how the negotiated compensation increases we had to cover with some of the new enrollment funding because we didn't have it elsewhere to be able to find it when we didn't receive it as part of our campus allocation or CSU allocation. So it's one of the highest priorities for the CSU and our interim chancellor. And I'll let maybe the president comment because I know this was a conversation they had recently.
Yeah, if we can go back to the very first slide that was up, I think.
Can I do it or am I?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
He's giving you the
Okay.
power.
Yeah, you should have.
Oh, okay.
Where you have the overview of the various timeline, Debbie.
Oh, the timeline.
Yeah. That, right, the next one. That one, that's the one. So when you look at here, the state of California is actually something very specific. That's the legislature. If you go back one, Debbie, this is what happens. The governor proposes the budget to the legislature. The legislature then at the end sends the governor a revised budget. And then right after that, there's a mini revise of the governor's budget. And then at the end, something magical happens here in which the two budgets converge together. And then at the end, we get the state budget. This money comes from the state of California. And in order for them to come to us, the legislature and the governor have to agree on what is being sent. So ultimately, any raises in the staff are coming from here. Because whatever we receive, if you go forward, Debbie, one, whatever we receive from the state of California is sent to the chancellor's office, which is in Long Beach. And then the chancellor then has the power to then say, I have this much money, I'm going to then divide it into 23 campuses. And we get 5%, about 5.1% actually, of the money that this budget represents from the chancellor's office. So and what's important about this is the following. There are two types of money. One money is one-time funding. And the governor this year gave us mostly one-time funding. So one-time funding is good for short-term initiatives or for short-term projects. If we need to do repairs, one-time money will do. If we need to do, some projects, one-time money will do. If we need to create a position, one-time money is not good. We need the other type of money, which is permanent funding. And permanent funding is the really good funding, because if the governor gives you $1 million of permanent funding, that's $1 million basically forevermore. They cannot take it from you unless they say, we're going to reduce your budget. And then, of course, they take it from you. So that's why it's so important that we join forces together. And I'm right with you, right? I need my staff to have the proper compensation. That we join forces in order to go back to the legislature and the governor to fund this Mercer study that was published recently. The next study, which is going to be the faculty study, is going to be coming up pretty soon as well. So pretty soon we'll have to deal with the staff, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have to deal with the faculty one as well. Yeah.
If I could just piggyback off of that just a bit, go to that original slide, that first slide that we looked at. So on a union standpoint, I don't know if you saw a lot of times that they had tables outside for people to come and sign, asking individuals to write letters and letting them know what the need was and why we needed this. This is the purpose behind it. Because we can do what we have the support on campus, which I don't think a lot of people on campus really truly understand that I don't think there's anyone holding back that process of wanting to provide some type of increase for our staff. But there's a process that is included in that. And so when you see them out there and they're asking, hey, sign this, write these letters, send it to the governor, because this is where it needs to go in order for it to continue to get past that. So when you see them out there and you see them asking or sending emails about that, that is what it's in regards to. We can only do so much, and then the rest of it is kind of out of our hands until we can kind of push and really request for other things to happen. So,
Belinda, one more thing that I can mention is that when this budget comes to us, it doesn't come to us as here, let's say it's $100 million, right? For easy analogies. Here's $100 million. Do with it whatever you want to do with it. No. It always has restrictions. It always has very specific things. So that's why when Debbie goes over the budget, when the Vice President goes over the budget, there are all of these categories that she has to address, because the legislature and the governor don't just simply tell us, do with this money whatever you want. We're increasing your budget, for example, right? They always say, we are increasing your budget for GI 2025, for deferred maintenance, for these other situations, right? In this case, the advocacy would be, we're increasing your budget specifically for staff increases to address the Mercer study. So that's really where we have to be very specific about how it is that we advocate for the funding for this.
Thank you, President. Very important. Thank you, Linda.
do we have any questions online? Ready to go?
Yes. Hi, Belinda. Yes, we actually do have several questions. So the first question is from Susan Pheasant, and it's regarding one-time money allocation for student housing. Does that mean we are building an additional dormitory or something else, such as housing?
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Pheasant, for the question. Yes, we will be building a new affordable housing project within our student housing residence halls. And we're just in the early stages. We're still looking at the site options and capacity, but it'll probably be somewhere around 125 new bed spaces, suite style, apartment style. And we're also looking to have some element of student family housing because we don't have that currently. And so we're looking to ensure that our portfolio, while meeting the affordable housing requirements, which is income that is 50% of the AMI, that our total portfolio between our community style, our suite style, and now this new project meet all of the affordable housing requirements for this program. And we're not done yet. We have more we need to do. So this 31 million, while we're very appreciative, we need more, because this is what allows us to keep our rates low for our students, because this is funding. It's not financing. We still have to finance approximately 15 million, but to be able to receive this grant funding was really important for our campus and for our students. So more to come on that timeline, Dr. Pheasant, but hopefully that answers your question. And appreciate all the great work that our team does in student housing under Director Erin Boley. And she's working closely with Tina Medina, and we'll be announcing more soon on that status of that project. And we have a very aggressive timeline. And so the siting, the location for this will be very important so that we can get going.
Chris, we'll go ahead and keep going online. We'll ask a couple of questions online.
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Benjamin Anderson. Can you speak to the sustainability initiatives?
Anything a little bit more specific? Of course, we have a number of sustainability initiatives occurring right now. A lot of them are linked to our central utility plant project. And stay tuned, we are adding some additional signage and fence wraps, right, Sue? And that's going to have a lot of that information on there about sustainability and energy conservation. And then we continue to work very closely with our Student Sustainability Task Force. In fact, we have a meeting, I think, coming up soon. And we'll also be looking at some of the requirements that recently came from the CSU and needing to have a dedicated position, sustainability coordinator position. So that'll be something that we will be looking at as well. But if there's anything more specific, Benjamin, please let me know.
Yes, to be a little more specific, it's regarding the ag monies coming in.
Oh, thank you. My apologies. Thank you. Yes, the 18.75 million that was part of the 75 million to the 4 campuses. We will be working with our new dean, who arrives, I think, September 15th, and with our constituents in our Jordan College. There is a preliminary project list that has been developed, but I know our new dean will want to look at that and work with the provost and others in looking at those important sustainability initiatives for our University Farm Laboratory, in addition to some desperately needed deferred maintenance and support of some equipment which will make our farm more sustainable and more energy efficient. So stay tuned. There'll be more information coming on that this fall. But thank you for that question.
Yes, I'm in ag. I can tell you some of the things that they're working with. I'm like, how old is that?
I think we do have some antiques.
Sorry, Chris, you have another question?
Yes, I have a lot more questions here. Are you ready? The next question is from Victoria Cisneros. What initiatives did the 1 million one-time funding to athletics from the tuition reserves support?
It is going to support some additional student support for student scholarships and athletic operations, and also with some of the initiatives that are tied to our new partnership with Valley Children's Healthcare. That is a one. They also had some additional capital projects and facility renewal projects that we needed to provide some support for, because those are technically state facilities. Even though they're utilized or leased to the Athletic Corporation, those are still state assets. So we work very closely with Athletic Director Terry Toomey and his team on some facility enhancements, as well as some program enhancements where some one-time funds were needed this year.
Thank you. The next question is from Benjamin Anderson. And the question is, can you speak to how work from home is affecting employment, and what, if any, adjustments might be made to accommodate DAs that work alone in department offices that can't take advantage of work from home because of the new rules on office closures?
Sure, and I may ask my colleague Provost Fu to also assist here. So I think, as all of you saw, the communication that came out about our telework program now that'll be going forward. It's not a pilot anymore. And also the information that was shared from the survey that was done last spring. So we recognize, and the survey data supported this, that being able to work remotely was well received by our employees. But there's a balance. There's a balance of the remote work, but also we have a campus where we're serving 25,000 students every day in person. And appreciate the President and Cabinet's support and our colleagues in human resources as well. We're really trying to strive to find that right balance. And also important as well as balance is equity. Because we recognize that not every position is able to telecommute one day, even 1 day a week. We have custodians and grounds workers and public safety personnel who are not able to do their jobs remotely. And also, as you mentioned, Benjamin, we have department assistants, administrative assistants, who there might be just maybe one staff person in a department office who's not able to do that because there's no one else to be able to keep that office open if they were to work remotely. So I know Provost Fu has had these conversations with the deans and associate deans, and it's really important that as much as possible there's equity in comparable positions, but that is one of the reasons why the program was not expanded beyond 1 day a week, is because it is very difficult to ensure that equity across the board, but that is our goal. It's not operationally feasible, and that's a key term, and that was a key term in our pilot, is it has to be operationally feasible. I know many areas have been able to take advantage of this, and I think it's going to be continuing to be a work in progress as we learn how we can maybe find ways to address the equity issues and ability to participate. But I want to thank the President for his support in keeping that program in place and as an option going forward. And it's definitely been well received, and the survey feedback has demonstrated that. But I think if you have specific questions, recommend you work with either your dean or associate vice president or your vice president if you have specific questions, because we have taken quite a bit of important time to have these conversations at a cabinet level because we recognize how important this option is for our staff and for our colleagues. And so we're doing our very best. And if there are individual situations, just encourage you to talk with your AVP, dean, or vice president. So I don't know if there's anything, Provost Fu, you'd like to add to that. I don't want to speak for academic affairs, so if I didn't,
Thank you.
I'm going to move that now.
Thank you, Vice President Astone. I just wanted to reiterate 2 points you just have made. Number one is telework policy is not intended to provide universal, absolute fairness, quote unquote. It is work functionality based first. We all have to perform our basic function to serve students and university community. So we will have areas, especially isolated areas, that we cannot guarantee absolute fairness, equal opportunity to have this telework opportunity. But we wanted to keep improving this program, and as Vice President Astone mentioned, if you have a specific case, specific employee, please ask them to discuss with their managers, supervisors, and they can discuss this with their deans and supervisors, all to the vice president level. And we wanted to look at all possibilities and how we reach the best balance of performing the essential functions while giving employees the opportunity of working remotely 1 day a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Fu.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, Jen.
Thank you for this presentation. It's very helpful, Vice President Astone. I do have a question. There was one slide that listed the new positions that are being added. And I'm wondering if that also included the second survivor advocate that our campus is getting.
That position is being funded in consultation with Interim Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Kuhn. Will be funded within the basic needs and student health and counseling center budget. There was funding available there for that based upon the allocation, the full allocation that you'll get this year that you didn't get last year. Because you got a portion of last year. So you'll get the full allocation this year, plus additional funds that'll come with 22-23. Thank you for that question, but it is funded. It's just not funded from some of the new funding. And we appreciate your support. And
All right.
That individual will start in January.
Great. So our next online question is from Stephen Austin. I know the dining hall has been geared towards mostly serving the students exclusively since COVID started. Will we see it being more open to faculty and staff? And is there a possibility that we will be seeing the return of discounts for faculty and staff on Fridays like we used to have?
Thank you, Stephen, for the question. The dining hall has always historically been to support our student residents and our students. And we were very appreciative of being able to support and offer on Fridays for our faculty and staff. I know the $6 Friday, it used to be $5 Fridays, then we had to go to $6. And then, of course, with COVID and needing to have more spacing, and actually the residence halls are full this year, which is a really good thing. We actually have 100 student residents in an overflow hotel this year. So we haven't had a wait list of this magnitude in many years. And so we were able to accommodate a portion at the overflow hotel and then hopefully be able to get them on campus by the spring. And so that's putting a little bit more pressure on the dining hall. We also just as many kind of dining operations, even locally, we're just having a real challenge with labor and some of the scheduling. And then of course our food prices, like everywhere, have gone significantly higher. So I think as we transition from, and see how the fall numbers are and capacity and, making sure that we hopefully don't have another surge with COVID that would cause maybe us to need to keep that spacing a little bit more at the dining hall. I mentioned to the president that we'll try to look to do something in the spring. I can't guarantee it's going to be $6 because costs, labor and food costs have gone up significantly since before the pandemic, but we'll try to do something because I know in addition to that just being a nice opportunity to have engagement with your fellow colleagues and to be able to see folks over there, it was a really nice gathering location. So we will try to look at something for the spring. Also in the spring, our retail dining concepts will open in the new Lyndon Stewart Resnick Student Union. So that will also give us a little bit more capacity to take care of our dining needs for our students and our student residents. So stay tuned, but thank you all for your support and wanting to patronize our dining hall. Our team does a great job there. We've just had some few challenges due to COVID and then kind of ramping up after repopulation and with continuity of labor. But thank you, and we'll try to do our very best for the spring.
Great. Our next question, there's quite a bit of questions in this one, is from Susan Pheasant. There seems to be an exodus of key positions going to other CSUs where they are able to earn a higher salary and perhaps also work from home. Is there a strategy for the following: developing a better, to better retain staff? We have received indirect costs to our colleges or college for years. Any timeline as to when these will be allocated? Does this show in the budget charts shown today? And with number 55 or 55 million, greater than 55 million in grants being generated this past year, the indirects are increasing. Sometimes projects are completed before the indirects are allocated. In example, which are supposed to support the projects?
Thank you, Dr. Pheasant. And if I don't answer your question completely, I know the provost and I would be glad to respond offline as well. But I'm going to try to make sure I've got I think there are a few questions in there. So, of course, retaining our talented staff and managers, both. The market, we all know the market is very tight right now. And there are options, and it could be that some positions are able to offer more remote work. And again, we never want to see anyone leave Fresno State. Fresno State's a very special place, but we recognize that at times employees may need to make decisions, and we do our very best to try to retain, but that we're not always successful. There's a lot of different strategies there and issues sometimes, but we always do our very best when we can to retain our talented staff and managers, and of course faculty as well. I want to include faculty in that as well. In regards to indirect, those indirect allocations they are not shown here because those are foundation funds. And that is an allocation that goes to academic affairs each year after we close the audit or complete the audit for the foundation. And so that usually typically happens in late fall, early spring. And if you do have specific questions about that, those funds go to academic affairs, and then academic affairs allocates them to the respective colleges and schools. And I think last year we did a little bit of a catch up because we were a little bit behind. And then going forward, that timeline should be a little bit more predictable. But again, if you have any specific questions, Dr. Pheasant, please don't hesitate to reach out to Provost Fu or myself. I hope that's okay. I want to make sure, I'm not sure if I answered all of your question. And Provost Fu, I don't know if there's any. Okay. But those funds are not shown here because those are outside of the state general fund budget.
Chris, you have more questions for us? We've got about 5 minutes, so we'll try and get in as many questions as we can.
All right, so we have about 4 or 5 more questions. The next question is from Anonymous. Is my understanding correct that we receive money from the state and tuition to cover our costs?
So we receive from the state to the CSU, and I'm going to go back. I think I'll go back. So these are the funds that we receive from the CSU, but from the state to the CSU. The tuition and fees come in locally from so when our students register and pay their tuition and fees, those funds come directly, when they're paid by the students, they come into our campus. So, but the total budget is based upon general fund revenues as well as tuition fees that are collected locally here at our campus. And that is estimated this year to be 148.4 million. And if we don't hit those tuition dollar targets, and Pam and her team keep a close eye on this all year long, then that would mean that our budget could potentially have, a deficit, because we're building our budget around this 356.9 million, assuming that we hit our tuition revenue targets. So working very closely with our colleagues in academic affairs and student affairs and enrollment management, and helping in any way we can to support our enrollment and the increased enrollment that was projected as part of our budget. So hope that answered the question.
All right, next question is from Lisa Bell. Do we know from the final CSU budget yet if staff raises for 2022 will be 7% or 8%?
Oh, they'll be 7% assuming that the employee receives meets expectations on their performance, their last performance evaluation, and that's for MPPs and confidentials. But for bargaining staff, that's already in place. And that was already approved and ratified by the trustees, depending upon which bargaining unit you may be in. So yes, it is 7% for CSUEU. And we have a chart that's been provided to each of the vice presidents that has all of the increases for each bargaining unit. But if you have any questions, please let me know. And I'm sorry, I didn't bring that chart with me and I don't want to quote anything wrong, but I know CSUEU is 7%.
Thank you. So we have 2 more questions here. The next question is anonymous. I understand that bargaining is out of the control of the university, but what about IRPs and reclassifications? Is there a budget for this? I am interested to see the data on submission rates and denial rates for IRPs and reclassifications. I would like some transparency.
So yes, IRPs and reclassifications would be a budgetary decision by each respective divisional area, and whether that's been delegated to an AVP or dean, depending upon where the level B budgets may reside. Just recently did provide to each of the vice presidents a summary of the IRPs for their division for this last year, as well as those that were approved, as well as those that were denied. And so each of the vice presidents have that information, and I'm sure they'll be sharing that with their leadership team. And HR did recently provide those reports, and so I've shared those with my colleagues. And we have consistently encouraged each of the divisional areas to try to set aside funds each year for IRPs and reclassifications, so that the budgetary dollars are there if the analysis from HR supports that request. And those can be either employee initiated or management initiated. So we have encouraged our colleagues to try to set aside some funds each year, and based upon the analysis by HR, whether those are approved or denied. And they can be denied for budget reasons, but we are strongly encouraging that at least there is some amount set aside for that purpose to support our staff. So there is transparency, and those reports are available for each division.
So Chris, we have one, you said we have one more question. Is it a?
Yes. There's one more question that came in, but the last one I initially pointed out here is this question is from Rocio Quiñones Montaño. Will you be sharing the results of this survey regarding telecommute?
Yes, I believe so. In working with our colleagues in OIE and University Communications, there's been I think a request to maybe look at more of the detailed data. And so I think they're working to see how we can provide that. So I think there'll be more information coming on that soon.
I'm not sure how much time we have. We have one more question that's anonymous. Let me know if we have time.
We're already after the hour, so let's go ahead and we'll jot that one down, and we'll send it over and get it put on our website, and then the answer for it as well. So just for the mind's sake of time and keeping everybody on track today, thank you all for being here with us today. I hope this information was useful.
Thank you.
I will be sharing it on our website. Thank you to Debbie and Dr. Fu and the Provost for being here and presenting this to staff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And for those of you who have additional questions that were not able to be asked, please send them on over to us. We will make sure that we get them answered. And just want to put a full disclosure, I appreciate communications. Now I understand why you do webinars and not always Zoom. So we will work on perfecting this process as well. So thank you all for being here today, and we'll be seeing you soon. Bye-bye.